A new study, described as a first of its kind, interrogates the decisions and travel planning of Black South African urbanites. Now, the study explores how socio-economic mobility and the cultural norms of people from the Western Cape, from KwaZulu-Natal and Gauteng, engage with domestic travel. Sample groups were made up of people aged between 25 to 44, with more than half of them women. Let's speak now to Kamohelo Lembe, a tourism lecturer and philosophy lecturer at Northwest University. Kamohelo, good morning. Thank you so much for joining us.
Good morning. Thank you for having me in this show.
Well, firstly, congratulations on your study. Let's begin here. Why did you feel it was important to focus specifically on Black South African urbanites in your research?
Okay, when I was doing my study and doing my research, I realized that the Black South African urbanite market is underexplored and not well researched. So the motivation really stemmed from me trying to understand the unique decision-making styles and influences that shape their travel behavior. And this segment, as it is so significant that the travel patterns reflect a broader social, cultural, and economic dynamic of urban South Africa. Hence, I decided to do a study in this, just to get an insight of how their identity, the community that they live in, as well as their lifestyle, impact their travel planning.
Now, you describe this group as a fast-growing travel market, yet largely missing from tourism studies and policy. Why do you think that gap has existed for so long?
I think this stems from, I think the only thing that we've been doing all this time, we've been researching about tourism as a general sector, describing everyone and just generalizing the travel market in general. So once we realize that there are specific segments and there are different travel behaviors or travel segments that have different characteristics and have different motivations, that's why now we realize that instead of generalizing, now we have to dwell on how different these segments are and how different this particular segment is from the rest of the segments. Hence, I decided to get in depth with this particular segment.
So, Kamo, as a tourism researcher and a philosophy lecturer as well, how do you think travel changes the way people see themselves and their place in the world?
I think in layman's words, I can say that traveling just brings you to who you are. I mean, you tend to discover that there are different things and there are different people all over the world. I mean, if you are born and bred in Mafikeng like me, you tend to think that everything that you know or that you resonate around is Mafikeng based. So now the moment you start to travel, you realize how different and how dynamic people are. And then you tend to learn different cultures, and then that's how you tend to get to know how different people are and how unique each and every place is, and how that unique place shapes or give meaning or identity to different people.
Yeah, it certainly does. It just expands your outlook on life, doesn't it? Yeah. So when you started this research, what were some of the biggest misconceptions that you noticed about how Black urban South Africans travel or plan their trips?
Okay, from previous literature, I noted that we generalized when it comes to this particular segment. We only knew that they like to travel in groups. They prioritize budget over everything else. They want safety, and of which those are some of the key things that resonated in my results. But as I did the study, I tend to realize that there is more to safety, there is more to security, there is more to budgeting than what meets the eye. So this particular travel segment now has unique characteristics, has different segments or has different ideologies other than the ones that we have already picked from previous literature. So now, from the study now, I tend to realize that this particular segment, when it comes to decision making, they tend to relate more or they tend to rely more on doing extensive research. They value credible information and affordability, as well as safety, as previous literature has stated. And one of the key things that I noted from the results, there is something that has not resonated in past literature, is that social media as well as influencers play a critical role in their decision making.
Yeah, let's talk about that role, actually, because I was very curious to know, how do you think that what influencers post on social media, how does that influence people's thinking and their behavior when it comes to travel and their choices?
I think from post-COVID, we now got to realize that technology plays a critical role when it comes to tourism. And then influencers as well as social media personnel have a bigger impact or an influence on how people take decisions, especially now given that people are more reliant on social media than watching like traditional newspapers. So now a word of mouth, or how people project or how people perceive a certain destination via social media, it tends to have a bigger influence on how they will take their decisions or how they will plan their traveling. Because now, if a well-known individual or a well-known influencer in that regard makes a certain comment or a certain project, a specific picture of a specific destination, we tend to now think, okay, as much as these people or this person can value this destination this much, now it means this place or this area now is more attractive or it's more relatable than how we perceive it in general. So influencers do have a significant role in our decision making.